On to this story now. The trial of controversial Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso resumes in the High Court in Port Elizabeth today. A ruling on the judge's recusal is expected to be announced. The pastor's lawyers approached the Supreme Court of Appeal on the recusal. Omotoso and two others face charges ranging from human trafficking to sexual assault and rape. Reporter Athi Mtongana is in Port Elizabeth for us, and she joins us live now from the court. Athi, good morning to you. So give us a quick rundown of what's expected to happen today before I ask you about who the next witness is going to be.
Well, today, Goli, we're expecting to hear whether the Supreme Court of Appeal has made a decision on Peter Doberman's, filing of papers at the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to appeal the two decisions that were made by Judge Mandela Makaula to refuse to recuse himself, and also the quashing of the charges. Now, that decision by the Supreme Court remains to be seen whether it will be given today, depending on when the state filed its responding papers at the Supreme Court of Appeal. So all of that will be heard today, Goli.
Just on this matter of Judge Makaula's recusal and his refusal to do so, if the decision from the Supreme Court of Appeal comes back and says he should have recused himself, that will have major implications for this trial, isn't it? Because the judge or the lawyer of Omotoso made it clear that the testimony of someone like Cheryl Zondi, for example, will have to be started afresh, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct, Loli, and in fact it will mean a much more lengthier trial. The more witnesses that are going to be taking the stand, it means that they're going to have to take the stand with a new judge if the Supreme Court of Appeal, files in favor of the defense. But the next witnesses, Loli, will be determined by whether or not this process is finished or not. Cheryl Zondi was the first one, and the defense coming out to say that Judge Mandela Makaula is in favor of her, saying that he was very biased throughout this trial and throughout the testimony of Cheryl Zondi. Remember, Goli, Judge Mandela Makaula wished Cheryl Zondi well for her exams when she went off to go write her exams at the University of Johannesburg. So some of those issues, the defense coming out to say that they seemingly are in favor of the defense, and in Omotoso's eyes that it looked like Judge Mandela Makaula was very much, trying to console Cheryl Zondi, and even when Judge Mandela Makaula intervened and trying to interject when Doberman was asking him questions about penetration and how long the centimeters were when Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso allegedly penetrated her.
All right, Athi, I guess the next witness, therefore, we might not be able to see that person, who they are, depending, of course, on this Supreme Court of Appeal judgment, is it?
That's correct, Loli. Then, only then, after Peter Doberman comes back to this court to give feedback on what the Supreme Court said to them. But also, Loli, it depends on when the state actually filed its responding papers. The last I spoke to Peter Doberman here in Port Elizabeth, Loli, he said that they'll be filing papers to the Supreme Court of Appeal immediately. That was the last time this case was heard here, and he said they will be immediately approaching the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now then, the state would have had to also respond with its responding papers at the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now, if they have filed those papers in time, then it means the Supreme Court would have made a decision before the sitting of today's court processes.
All right, Athi Mtongana, thank you very much for that update, giving us a report there ahead of the start of that court hearing this morning, watching the trial of a Nigerian pastor, Timothy Omotoso.